You've been told to trust yourself. But what if that's the biggest mistake you could make? Most people go through life convinced they already have the answers about who they are, what's right, and how the world works. But what if those beliefs are the very thing holding you back? Over 2,400 years ago, Socrates, arguably the greatest thinker in human history, made a shocking claim. The more certain you are, the more likely you are to be wrong. His ideas were so dangerous, they sentenced him to death. Why? Because Socrates didn't just question the world, he questioned himself. And through that, he uncovered truths about power, purpose, and the mind that most people never realize. In this video, we're diving into 5 life-changing lessons from Socrates, lessons that can challenge the way you think, break through your mental blind spots, and reveal a deeper truth about how to live a meaningful life. But be warned, once you learn these lessons, you'll never see the world the same way again. Let's begin. Socrates wasn't a ruler. He didn't write books. He never sought fame. Yet his ideas became so powerful, they outlived empires. Born in ancient Athens, Socrates spent his days walking through crowded marketplaces, not to buy or sell, but to ask questions. Questions that made people uncomfortable. Questions that exposed hidden ignorance in the most powerful figures of his time. He believed one thing above all else. An unexamined life is not worth living. And that belief wasn't just philosophy. It was a threat to those who wanted to control the truth rather than find it. In the end, his relentless search for wisdom cost him everything. But the lessons he left behind, they hold the keys to unlocking a clearer, more purposeful life, even today. And once you understand these 5 lessons, you'll start to see the world and yourself in a way you never have before. Let's dive into the first, and perhaps the most humbling truth Socrates ever taught. Lesson 1. The only true wisdom is knowing you know nothing. Think about this. How much of what you know is actually true? Socrates believed that certainty is a trap. The moment you think you have all the answers, you stop asking the questions that actually matter. There's a famous story that reveals just how deeply he held this belief. One day, the oracle of Delphi, a mystical figure believed to speak for the gods, declared that Socrates was the wisest man in Athens. But Socrates didn't celebrate. In fact, he was confused. He openly admitted he wasn't wise. So how could this be true? Determined to prove the oracle wrong, Socrates went on a mission. He questioned the most respected men in Athens, politicians, poets, and scholars, people who were certain they knew the truth. But with each conversation, he discovered something shocking. The people who claimed to know the most actually understood the least. They hid behind titles and eloquent words, but when pushed, their knowledge crumbled. And that's when Socrates realized the truth. I am wiser than these men only in this. I know that I know nothing. So what does this mean for you? In today's world, we're surrounded by opinions. On social media, in the news, from so-called experts. But how often do we stop and question what we're told? Most people cling to their beliefs, even when they're wrong, because admitting they don't know is uncomfortable. But Socrates' first lesson is this. The path to true wisdom begins with humility. When you're willing to admit what you don't know, you open the door to learning, growth, and better decisions. So ask yourself, what beliefs am I holding on to just because they feel safe? What might I be wrong about? Because the moment you start questioning everything is the moment you truly begin to understand. And this is just the beginning. The next lesson, it's a harsh truth, but one that separates those who live with meaning from those who simply exist. Lesson 2. An unexamined life is not worth living. What if everything you're doing, your job, your relationships, your goals, was leading you nowhere, and you didn't even realize it? Most people never stop to question the path they're on. They follow routines, chase what society says is success, and assume that's just how life is supposed to be. But Socrates had a different view, one that cost him his life. At 70 years old, Socrates was put on trial. His crime? Corrupting the youth and questioning the status quo. The Athenian leaders wanted him silenced, and when the jury found him guilty, they offered him a choice: abandon your teachings or die. Most people would have begged for mercy, but not Socrates. Instead, he stood before the court and delivered the words that would echo through history. The unexamined life is not worth living. To Socrates, a life without self-reflection, without questioning your choices and values, was worse than death. And so, he chose to drink hemlock poison, dying for his belief that a life blindly lived isn't really living at all. So what does this mean for you? It's easy to get stuck in autopilot, waking up, working, scrolling through distractions, without ever asking, why am I doing this? Am I living a life true to myself, or one shaped by others' expectations? Socrates' lesson is clear. Don't just exist. Examine. If you don't pause to reflect on your life, your decisions will be made for you, by your fears, by society, by other people's opinions. But when you start asking deeper questions, something shifts. You stop living by default and start living with purpose. So here's a challenge. Take 5 minutes today and ask yourself, am I on a path that aligns with who I want to become? Or am I avoiding the hard questions because they make me uncomfortable? Because the truth is, if you never examine your life, you may wake up one day and realize it wasn't really yours. And that brings us to the next lesson, a lesson that most people never learn. But those who do, they gain a power no one can take away. Lesson 3. Control begins with the mind. What if the greatest battle you'll ever face isn't out there, but inside your own mind? Socrates believed that your thoughts shape your entire reality. While most people try to control the world around them, chasing money, power, or approval, he taught a different path. Let him who would move the world first move himself. In other words, if you can't control your own mind, you'll be controlled by everything else. Your emotions, other people's opinions, even random events. There's a powerful story that reveals how deeply Socrates lived this truth. One day a man approached Socrates, angry and shouting, hurling insults at him in public. The crowd expected Socrates to react, to fight back, but he didn't. Instead, he calmly turned to his students and said, "If someone kicks a donkey, should I kick it back?" The man's anger couldn't touch him, because Socrates understood a profound truth. No one can control you unless you let them. He believed that external events, criticism, failure, even injustice, are beyond your control. But your response, that belongs to you. And this lesson is more important today than ever. We live in a world where it's easy to be triggered by bad news, online arguments, or people who try to bring you down. But Socrates' wisdom offers a different path. Master your mind, and you master your life. So how can you apply this? When something upsets you, pause and ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Am I reacting or choosing my response? Because here's the truth. The moment you let others control your emotions, you give away your power. But when you train your mind to stay calm and focused, you become unshakable, no matter what life throws at you. And that brings us to the fourth lesson, a lesson about truth and why most people are too afraid to find it. Lesson 4. Question everything, even yourself. What if the things you're most certain about are the very things holding you back? Socrates believed that most people live inside an illusion, a prison made of assumptions, half-truths, and beliefs they never question. But here's the uncomfortable truth. If you never question what you believe, you might be living a lie. One of Socrates' most famous teachings was something called the Socratic method, a way of uncovering truth through relentless questioning. He would ask simple but piercing questions that exposed contradictions people didn't even realize they had. And this wasn't just a game, it was a path to freedom. Because when you question your beliefs, you break free from false assumptions about who you are, what's possible, and how the world works. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. Socrates didn't just question others, he questioned himself. Constantly, he believed that the most dangerous lies aren't the ones we hear from others. They're the ones we tell ourselves. So what does this mean for you? If you want to grow, if you want to make better decisions and live a life that's truly yours, you have to be willing to ask the hard questions. What if I'm wrong about the path I'm on? What beliefs am I clinging to just because they feel safe? Is this really what I want? Or have I just accepted it without thinking? Most people avoid these questions because they're uncomfortable, but Socrates taught that discomfort is the price of wisdom. And here's the reward. When you question everything, even yourself, you don't just uncover truth, you uncover freedom. And that leads us to Socrates' final lesson, a lesson about courage and why most people will never find real wisdom.
Lesson 5. Courage is in seeking the truth, not having all the answers. What if the bravest thing you can do is admit you don't know everything? In a world obsessed with certainty, Socrates believed something radical. Real courage isn't about having all the answers. It's about never stopping the search for truth. And this belief wasn't just words. It defined how he lived and how he died. When Socrates stood trial, he had a choice: conform and live, or question and die. He could have apologized. He could have abandoned his teachings. But instead, he chose to speak the truth, even when it meant his death. Why? Because Socrates understood that truth is worth everything, even your life. But here's the part most people miss. Socrates never claimed to possess the truth. What made him different was his willingness to seek it, no matter the cost. And that's the final, most profound lesson. True wisdom isn't about certainty. It's about the courage to keep questioning, even when the answers are unclear. So what does this mean for you? It means having the courage to admit when you don't know, challenge beliefs, even the ones you've held your entire life. Asterisk, asterisk. Keep searching, because no one else can do it for you. Most people cling to easy answers because it feels safe. But Socrates' wisdom is a reminder that the real journey, the one that leads to meaning and freedom, begins where certainty ends. And that journey is yours to take. So, here's a question to leave you with. What truth are you avoiding because it scares you to face it? Because the moment you find the courage to ask that question, your life begins to change. Socrates' teachings may be over 2,400 years old, but they've never been more urgent. Here are the 5 life-changing lessons he left behind. 1. The only true wisdom is knowing you know nothing, because admitting what you don't know is a first step toward understanding. 2. An unexamined life is not worth living, because without reflection, you may wake up one day living a life that isn't yours. 3. Control begins with the mind, because nothing outside you has power unless you give it permission. 4. Question everything, even yourself, because the biggest lies are the ones we tell ourselves. 5. Courage is in seeking the truth, not having all the answers, because true freedom lies in the willingness to never stop questioning. Socrates may have lost his life, but his wisdom still speaks to those brave enough to listen. And now that question is yours. Will you live a life of easy answers, or will you have the courage to seek the truth? If these lessons resonated with you, there's more to uncover. Subscribe to this channel for more timeless wisdom from history's greatest minds. And now, I want to hear from you. Which of Socrates' lessons hit you the hardest? Drop your thoughts in the comment below. And remember, the search for truth never ends.